Welcome, welcome. My name is Eamon Chandel and I am Head of Events at Women in Mining UK. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for our second educational event of the year, very kindly supported by Imperial College London. Before we officially start, I would like to run through the usual housekeeping points. Please note we are recording today's event. If you could be so kind to just keep your mics on mute during the panel discussion, that would be greatly appreciated. Your cameras have been turned off those, but if you would like to switch them on, please feel free to at any time. And of course, we will be taking questions from our audience via the chat button at the bottom of your screen. In the meantime, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to our moderator today, Ariadna Peretz. Ariadna, thank you once again for volunteering your time and expertise, and I'll hand over to you now to start us off.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Usually at Women in Mining UK events, we teach you something, such as something about finance or investment, ESG, corporate governance, mining techniques, perhaps on the moon. Today, we're going to do something different. Today, we're going to take you on a journey from learning to leading and leading to learning, because education isn't just something you do at the beginning of your career. Your guides on today's journey will be these four women. They'll introduce themselves in a bit, but first, let's do a poll question.
Right, lovely. Thank you, Ariadna. I'm going to share this with all of you, and you should see it come up on your screen now. You've got 30 seconds to answer this one. Are you considering further education or going to dive straight into the job market? Now I can see the answers on my side, and let's see how many of you think you'll be going back to further education or into the job market. Oh, and this is very interesting because we actually did this poll at the last educational event on the 24th of March, and I can tell that the answers are very similar. So the sentiment hasn't changed in the last 2 weeks. Right, here we go. I'm going to end the poll and I'm going to share the results with all of you. So you should see those come up on your screen now. Looks like you're all heading back to the job market.
Very cool. Well, just because you go into the job market today doesn't mean you'll go back to school. And that's something that we'll learn today with our guests. So the first question is, please, if we could go around the room, perhaps in alphabetical order. So starting with Carol, if you could introduce yourself and please give us an example or a memory of a memorable experience related to learning or leading within the mining industry.
Okay, thanks, Ariadna. So my name's Carol Holsell. I'm a senior teaching fellow, I guess is my formal title, but I teach at Imperial College in London, and I'm mainly involved in the Metals and Energy Finance MSc course. So my background is as a geologist. I graduated Well, my first degree, I graduated in the mid-80s. I then completed a PhD. I went to work in the mining industry in Australia. I spent probably about 20 years in Australia, returned to the UK, switched to teaching and to academia. And that's what I've been doing for the last sort of 5 or 6 years. In terms of a memorable experience, I guess I wanted to share one that's probably not such a positive, but I think it shows just how far we've come in the last 30 years or so. So if I think back to, let's say, 1985, 1986, I was studying mining geology at Imperial College. I was about to graduate, and as is the case, you know, for the final year students, we had all these companies coming around doing their recruitment presentations. There was a bit of a boom going on in the industry, so there was a lot of recruitment going on. And I remember walking into the room with the only other female student on the course, And the first thing that the presenter from this international mining company said, the company will remain nameless, was, "Oh, you're wasting your time. We don't hire women in technical roles." And this was repeated. This was repeated in more than one company, even in companies in the UK. I went on a residential course, management recruitment course, and they said, yes, it's great, but we can't hire you because we can't have women working underground. So, we have come along a fair bit, and there's still a way to go, but that was one of my first experiences of trying to break into the job market in mining. Say 1985, 1986, I was studying mining geology at Imperial College. I was about to graduate, and as is the case, for the final year students, we had all these companies coming around doing their recruitment presentations. There was a bit of a boom going on in the industry, so there was a lot of recruitment going on. And I remember walking into the room with the only other female student on the course. And the first thing that the presenter from this international mining company said, the company will remain nameless, was, "Oh, you're wasting your time. We don't hire women in technical roles." And this was repeated. This was repeated in more than one company. Even in companies in the UK, I went on a residential course, management recruitment course, and they said, yes, it's great, but we can't hire you because we can't have women working underground. So, we have come along a fair bit, and there's still a way to go, but that was one of my first experiences of trying to break into the job market in mining.
Hi everyone, I'm Catriona. I am currently, the Chief of Staff supporting the Chief Executive of the Copper Division at Rio Tinto. Like Carol, I'm a geologist by background. Went to the RSM to do my geology degree. I then spent 4 years or so sort of in the field across various different roles in exploration and resource geology. I then returned to Imperial to do the Metals and Energy Finance course. So that's where I met Carol. And since then I've sort of spent time in private equity and then on to Rio Tinto in a couple of roles across sort of the M&A space, as well as now more general management. So it's been a diverse career history so far, but one of many different experiences. I suppose in terms of a memorable, a memorable realization, really. During some of my roles, I've been lucky enough to visit a number of different sites around the world, and two of which struck me. So when I went to Burkina Faso, and when I also went to Guinea to look at a couple of different projects, going to those places and just seeing the impact that mining, the positive impact that mining, or the potential of a mining project to be developed there can have on a community was just was quite overwhelming. I think we're pretty lucky as an industry. There aren't that many that you can't move the resources underground, so you kind of have to go where the resources are. And especially in developing countries, those resources can go some way to alleviate poverty in those communities, provide safe working conditions, provide jobs that can support families. So it was, I suppose we see it through, or I previously saw it through a lens which was quite technical. You just go there, you try and find out how much ore is in the ground, what's the financial returns on this project. But by actually getting feet on the ground and going to see these assets sort of in situ, you really understand the full context of the community setting. And I think it just struck me that we kind of have a a real responsibility as an industry in general to make sure that we do mining right, and because these communities are so reliant on us to make it work for them, in obviously an environmentally a sustainable manner, as much as it is going to be you know, the social side of it too. So yeah, I guess that's one reflection I've had. But I think as the industry, it's not something that's often talked about so much at the sort of learning level in universities, that mining can have such a positive impact on the communities. So thanks.
So perhaps if I go next. So I came into mining really from a finance perspective entirely, rather than a geology or engineering degree. And my whole career really has been in finance, and most of it in mining finance, which I kind of arrived at, I would say, purely by accident, in that I'd been working in project finance in banking for a little while. And I was working at the French bank, Société Générale, and they're a bank that did a lot of hedging with mining companies in their trading room, but didn't really understand mining and mining risk. And as a result, weren't always making the right decisions around where to have their exposures with mining companies. And so they decided to set up a mining team. And I'd had a background on project finance and was kind of sequestered into this team, really by chance. And that was quite a long time ago. And I stayed with the team as it grew. I ended up heading up the team, growing the activity for the bank, and broadening the sphere in terms of what we were working with mining companies beyond just hedging, into financing, into mergers and acquisitions, et cetera, et cetera. I left banking at the end of 2019, joined the board of 2 gold mining companies. I'm also on the board of BlackRock World Mining Trust. So looking at it very much now from an investor perspective rather than a banking perspective. I'm on the board of WIM as well, and I'm a trustee of the Camborne School of Mines. So, by accident, I ended up in this career, and I kind of stayed in it. And I suppose that's one of my key, I suppose when I talk about memorable experiences or learning, I think, if you're at the beginning of your career, you can kind of have this idea, where you want to go. And I would just urge everyone to think very carefully about, being open to opportunities. So, you can have in mind a career plan, but I think you mustn't be so rigid that you don't take chance and opportunity into account, because sometimes that might lead you well into something that you hadn't anticipated, that maybe you thought you weren't best placed for, but can actually lead you in a direction that actually is, very, very rewarding. So by all means, I think, putting in place building blocks and the right kinds of skills, as you all are doing, is absolutely essential. But, just remember that, you can't necessarily control your environment. So, be open to opportunities and be flexible. And I think that's one of the things that's kind of helped me with my career. I didn't always intend to do what I did do. I didn't even really plan to go into banking. It kind of happened. So, just retain that flexibility. And I think that is really something that's worth thinking about early in your career, not just as you get into it.
So it's a great introduction, because I can just lead off of that. I echo everyone's sentiment. So I didn't start off wanting to get into mining. I sort of fell into it. So I'm Sanam Nourbakhsh. I work as a mining specialist salesperson at Berenberg at the moment. I started off in finance as well, also fell into that kind of. So I started at JP Morgan, back when banking was still the cool place to be. So I started investment banking and was kind of a generic banker, and then moved into oil and gas just by accident, really, because that was the sector that they needed help with. And it was oil and gas and maritime, and it was based in Dubai. And so when the financial crisis then hit, I was, stuck in the Middle East. Nobody was, looking at anything to do in maritime, because that was the first sector hit. So more and more we picked up oil and gas. I kind of found it very interesting, the underlying of it. So the oil and gas aspect, the geology. So whenever I had meetings, it kind of struck me as a very interesting thing to want to learn more about. And I felt like I was a bit out of my depth, especially being a woman. Everyone just assumed, oh, she doesn't know the technical. So that kind of made, it was a bit of a challenge for me, and I wanted to prove everyone wrong. So when it came to, having to do something after I'd lost my job, everyone was going and doing an MBA. Instead, I thought, okay, let me go and do something technical and actually learn about the geology and the underlyings of the natural resources space. So came across the master at Imperial College, the master's in metals and energy finance, which Kat also did, and Carol taught on. I was the first class to sit in on her mining geology lesson. So, so within that, I kind of fell into mining after. So the intention was to focus on oil and gas, but a lot of the course was mining focused, and I really enjoyed it. And there was an opening to become a gold in the research department of Bank of Montreal as an associate to cover the gold space. So I then fell into gold specifically and did that for about 4 years, and got to travel all over the world, mainly Africa, and very much share the sentiment of Kat and her experiences, being actually on site and seeing with your own eyes, what the impact is that you are making there, the mining companies are making there. And I guess memorable experience would be kind of in line with what Kat said, but for me, what was very eye-opening is, you're basically driving on the same road 2 kilometers away, and you can very much see just by being there how 2 different mining companies are doing things very, very differently from a social perspective, and how the local communities just change in terms of their wealth and their kind of approach. And so I think what I learned through all this travel is, there's ways of doing things right and wrong. And it's, our responsibility to really push those stories where it is responsible, it's done in a responsible way. And, it's quality businesses and quality managers leading good efforts down in other continents, where I think sitting from an investor perspective, sometimes you kind of lose sight of that because, you're focused on numbers, production, forecasts, etc. So sometimes you're a bit more disconnected to what is actually happening, how your money is really being put into the ground. And so, another example is, being in the same country, the same asset being bought by different companies, and, being there before when it was under one management, and then there again under another management, how different the approaches are, and, the social licensing, the importance of it, and, just to make sure that, you're aware of that there are right and wrong ways of doing things, and just having that awareness and that, perspective. Whenever I look at companies now, I use that lens, and, I kind of question everything. And that's something that I learned through having been in the sector and experiencing different aspects of it.
Great. Thanks, everyone, for those intros and sharing those memorable experiences with us. Kat kind of alluded to this, but I'd like to ask everyone, the original question was, how many years have you been in the industry for? We don't need to know your age, but what keeps you here? What keeps you saying no to the industries that try to poach you? What keeps you motivated? And Sanam, if you don't mind, we'll go backwards alphabetically.
Okay, yeah, sure. So pretty much in line with what I was just talking about. So I think from a personal perspective, it's absolutely the travel aspect as well. So, mines aren't usually, well, at least in gold mining where I was, they're scattered, sort of not in the most conventional areas, right? So you get to travel and see countries and places within countries that you would never have access to. And, you get to see landscapes that, you know, I couldn't dream of from a helicopter, right? And so, so personally, having those experiences and having seen things that I wouldn't have seen otherwise is certainly up there. And as part of that, it also comes meeting fascinating people. So there's a lot of interesting characters in the industry, and, you know, getting to know the different cultures, the different approaches, the different characters. It's just very fascinating to be amongst that group of people. And then more kind of, you know, impactful is, you know, what I was saying earlier, and what Catriona was saying is, Kat was saying, is the impact that, you know, mining companies are able to have. So whether you're an investor, whether you're in sales, whether you're in research, whether you're working on the industry side, you know, I think all of us in the industry are able to really make an impact. And so it's about, you know, it's an industry that continuously needs capital. And so it's about making sure that we as a whole funnel capital to the right projects, and that those projects are able to, you know, make longer lasting, impactful, bring longer lasting impactful solutions to communities, to countries, to governments. So, you know, I remember having the opportunity to sit with one of the country's prime ministers, and, you know, I was asking them about policies and, you know, pushing on things. So, you know, you get access to a variety of people where you're able to make an impact, no matter how junior you are. It's down to all of us to take that role quite serious and be responsible about it.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with all of that, Sanam. And I suppose what's kept me in the industry for so long, it's over 20 years. And, you know, I don't think I'm that kind of patient a person, but what's kept me is, I suppose, you know, it's a combination of things. One is the people. You know, I think the mining industry, whether you're looking across, you know, mining companies themselves, you're looking at the, you know, the banks, you're looking at the legal world, you're looking at the PR side, you're looking at the whole community of the mining world, as it were, is a very close community. And I think that is something that has kind of stays with you, and you feel very much part of throughout your career. And I think that has kept me within the industry. The other thing is that, you know, no two mining companies, no two mining projects are the same. There is constant kind of challenge in terms of the risks and opportunities that they face, which I find refreshing. And the world itself is changing too, and how mining companies sit within the world. And I think that has also kept me very much engaged, and has kind of taken me and extended my career more now onto the kind of sustainability, ESG focus. You know, mines have always had an impact on their environment, but they are very much part of their environment as well, as Kat and Sanam have highlighted. So I think that's an area which just intellectually I find very interesting. So it's a combination of all those three, I think, that's kept me in the industry for as long as I have. And you know, it was, as I said at the beginning, it really wasn't my intention. So there's clearly something that's kept me here.
Thanks, Judy. Yeah, for me, you know, building on both Sanam and Judith's point, well, first of all, I'd say it's just the breadth of different things you can do within the industry. You know, my career so far has had dabbles in a lot of different things, and it's about sort of taking those opportunities when they're presented to you. And I think as we look forward, as mining modernizes, and the introduction of the digitization and the automation and that kind of space is a whole new area where I think, you know, a lot of young people particularly can leverage their skills to make an impact there. So I've been in the industry, I guess, for about a decade now. That makes me sound really old. But what I'm most excited about, and what kind of keeps me here, is actually the ability to have that impact in changing the mining industry in the future, and, you know, building on what great work has been done to date, but equally, you know, articulating what that future vision of mining is, and then being in a position to really make a difference. Because I think, you know, the industry itself gets quite a lot of criticism from external parties, but, you know, to be in the thick of it and to actually be in charge of trying to make changes, I think is a real opportunity. So that's what keeps me here. Like, wow, that's, again, it's that responsibility. I feel quite a responsibility for doing my part, really. And I think that is exciting for everyone. Of course, mining is itself the solution to the renewable energy and the green vision of our future, because a lot of that needs all the raw materials that mining provides. So you can't have one without the other. So yeah, I think it's like the fundamental building block of all of that, and that's pretty cool to be involved with. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Kat. Yeah, look, I think Kat and Judith and Sanam have really sort of spoken about how we all feel. I mean, these are things that keep us all in the industry. I've been in the industry. I think I said earlier, I graduated initially in 1986, so you can do the maths on that one. And I keep coming back. What keeps me here? Well, I mean, I initially went into the industry. I mean, I was one of those kids that was always collecting pebbles on the beach. We spent holidays here in the UK in places that were geologically very interesting. I was the first person in my family to go to university. So when I said to my parents, I want to study geology, they didn't bat an eyelid. It's just, oh, that's very nice, off you go. And I still get that buzz. I mean, I remember the first time, so my first job in Australia was at Olympic Dam, which I think most people would be aware is this huge copper, gold, uranium mine. And I went there very soon after it opened. It had only been operational for a couple of years. So I was able to meet with the people who discovered it. I was able to hear the stories firsthand around that deposit. The geologists were still trying to work out what on earth it was and how it got there. And just the buzz of being involved in that, and even just being able to see, because it was such a huge operation, being able to see the entire process laid out, from mining through processing through to, watching copper cathodes being poured, watching gold bars being poured. It was amazing. And I get that buzz every time I go on site. I get that buzz every time I go in the field. It's that discovery. It's that, yeah, I don't know what it is, but there's the people and there's the travel. But for me, it just comes back to it's the industry, it's the discipline that I feel really passionate about. I've moved more into a teaching role in the last few years, and one of the things I've got involved with is with outreach programs, and I have 2 children. So I go into the local school. I went into the schools when they were at school, and if you go into a school and you go into a class of 9 and 10-year-olds with a suitcase full of rocks and fossils, they love it. They absolutely love it. Yeah, they engage with it completely. And if you then talk to them about how, well, this rock, we get copper out of this rock, and, those little headphones that you're always wearing and you're listening to your music, it comes out of this rock. And so for me, I think more recently, it's been that education process. It's been that thing of really trying to make people aware that I come into contact with, and particularly the younger people, that this is essential. Yeah, everything is grown or mined is what we always used to say, and it's still the case. And so yeah, I stay here, and I'm still in the industry. I did leave the industry briefly post MBA. I dabbled in investment banking. I dabbled in public sector stuff. But at the end of the day, I really needed to be back there on site, and involved in the industry. So yeah, I can't see me going anywhere anytime soon.
Great, thanks for sharing, everyone. And I agree with you, Carol. We need to start them young. I'm from Vancouver, and every year we have Roundup, and a colleague of mine would present to the grade 5 children, so 11-year-olds, and they were so interested. And I think, yeah, by the time they get to high school or university, it's maybe a bit too late. So we did have some, I'm going to move on from these group questions onto some more specific questions about Imperial College London and the Metals and Engineering Finance MSc course, because that's why we're here today. So Carol, the next question is for you. Can you tell us a little bit about this program and why it's something that should be considered? Perhaps Kat and Sanam also want to jump in afterwards, seeing as, you know, they did it.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think I've covered this before, but so the Metals and Energy Finance Master's Program, it's a joint program. It's run by the Department of Earth Science and Engineering and the Business School. And we basically cover all the technical and financial aspects of valuation of minerals projects. It's a 12-month course, so it's a full year, it's full time, it's fairly intensive. Yeah, we have a very wide range of people come into the course. We have a lot of people, both in terms of background and age, actually, coming back to Judith's point about you know, taking opportunities and continuing to learn and move through the industry. So we have people from finance backgrounds, we have people from mathematics background, we have people from geology, mineral processing, chemical engineering. So we kind of get that mix, probably 50-50 between you know, the technical backgrounds and the more financial backgrounds. They're all people who have an interest ultimately in working in the mining industry or in the minerals and petroleum industry. And I guess they're seeing it as that bridge to move into that space. We have a range from graduates, new graduates, recent graduates, through to people with 10 or more years industry experience. So, you know, that mix is very powerful in terms of sharing experiences and networking. So, you know, I think it's a good course, and yeah, I definitely recommend it. But I think, you know, it's worth talking to, obviously that's my perspective. I think Kat and Sanam can probably talk to it more from a student point of view.
Thanks, Carol. I think for me, the course is a great pivot. So coming from sort of solely geology, I had some internship experience in the mining finance space prior to doing the course. But I guess the catalyst for why I wanted to do it was to get that financial theory, like ground me in that, so I could be confident going for my next role in the finance sphere. And the course absolutely gave me that. And I think particularly the interesting point is the collaboration with the business school. But equally, it also gave me the exposure to other facets of the mining industry that I hadn't got through being on the drill rig or looking at the geological models. So sort of the processing side, the engineering side, and also, of course, the site visits. So we had a 2-week trip to South Africa. We got to see a whole heap of different mines. That was a really, really useful part of the course. So yeah, I mean, I came to it having had some experiences. There were lots of my peers who were sort of just graduating, and this was a way for them to specialize. Equally, there were those older than me who were doing the course for other reasons, but it does give you a very tight network, and which I still leverage to this day. Yeah, so I really do recommend it. And I guess it solves a lot of different problems for different people. It's a great course to, as I say, sort of pivot between either or technical to finance or finance to technical.
Yeah, so it was a very, very tough year for me. I was one of the few doing the other way around. So I came from finance into it, and I hadn't done any geology before. I think I'd done chemistry when I was like, I don't know, 17 or something. And so by the time I did the master, I was 27. So you can imagine how rusty my technical skills had been in terms of that. So it was a very, very difficult year. I needed to brush up on a lot of kind of chemistry, physics, maths. But it's probably the most rewarding thing I've done, just because what it has given me afterwards. So it shaped my career to what it is today. I wouldn't have come into mining at all had I not done the master's. The master's itself, I think there's a lot of modules that, felt redundant at the time. But once I kind of started in the job market, I realized how it all kind of fit into the real world. So I think when you're a student, sometimes sitting there like, why am I doing this? It might not make sense right then, but eventually it does. And you get to learn a lot of different aspects, as Kat said, about the industry. So anything from sort of fiscal schemes to the geology, to the mining engineering side, to contracting, to strategic management. I mean, it basically encompasses everything from the beginning to the end of project appraisal, which is a very, very useful tool to have when you start your career in mining. I think particularly in research, I found it to be extremely helpful, because basically my job as an analyst was doing exactly that. I needed to look at an asset or company and go through exactly those steps that I was learning in the master's program. So, looking at it from, a technical perspective, applying the financial modeling to it, etc. And so it was exactly what I needed for that particular job. In terms of having done the site visits, I think that was really the most added value out of that course, because it brought together all of the theory that we had learned throughout the year into something tangible. So, when you're then on site, you don't just go to one mine, you see a variety of mines. So we went to coal mines, went to gold mines, to PGM mines, to some projects which were, just at exploration stage. Went to good examples and bad examples. So, it was really, really eye-opening and kind of pulled everything that we'd learned together for me at the end. And what I would certainly say is one of the most important things that I walked away with from that course is really the network and the people that I met through the course, after the course, through the alumni community, etc. So, as an example, I was on I think it was a Rangold side visit, I can't remember, but I was somewhere in Africa, in DRC, I think it was, and I had my little yellow Imperial College field book, which is basically what everyone sort of uses when you join the course. And I was standing there taking notes, and one of the geologists, one of the technical guys that was sort of on the site saw that and was like, "Oh my God, are you an Imperial College alumni?" Me too. And so immediately, we got chatting, and so that's just a small example of how throughout my career, I've come across people who've done the masters, who have helped shape my career as well. I got the job at Bank of Montreal through my network at Imperial. And, it just kind of, the list goes on. And so it's helped me personally to be where I am. Absolutely. I wouldn't have gotten any of my jobs after that had I not done the master's, that's for sure, because I wouldn't have even been aware of what the mining sector really has to offer had I not done the course.
Well, thank you. So it sounds super intense, but very rewarding. So Carol, I have to ask you, Sanam's talked about the intensity, her and Kat have both talked about the networking and the field trips or the site visits. How has ICL adapted to COVID so your students get the same value with all these travel restrictions and restrictions in general happening right now?
Yeah, look, it's been really tough. And I guess it was really tough this time last year. We were scrambling to get everything online. We were limited, you know, we were basically told, I'm not sure at what date, but college basically went completely online. Yeah, and then we had to put all our exams had to be online. So, you know, we've adapted. I think for last year's cohort, they'd already had that networking opportunity. They'd had a field trip. And then things went online and we just sort of continued. And I guess we were getting the systems up, but they, you know, it all happened quite smoothly. I think this year we kind of know what we're doing with it online. So, you know, everything's run in Teams. We did have some face-to-face lectures, I think, at the start of this term. So in September, we were able to offer limited spaces within the lecture theatre. So we couldn't, I think the business school, for example, would run sessions simultaneously online, and they would have people in person in the lecture theatre, but those people had to sort of pre-book because they were limited to sort of 10 people with social distancing. That all stopped after Christmas. You know, we've got software. They've developed software. So for the mineral deposits course, I had some really nifty software where I could share, you know, 3D images of rocks and mining operations, and you could sort of rotate around them and look at them. Look, it's not the same. You know, no one's really pretending that it is. I think the biggest issue, and I was talking to the students today, I had a meeting with the current cohort today. I think the biggest issue that they are struggling with is not getting that networking among themselves. So it's not so much the delivery as they're not meeting. It's all that informal networking and informal meeting, you know, as students that they're missing out on. And I think that's the one they're feeling at the moment. So we were exploring ways we might try and rectify that, because obviously these guys have been mostly online for the whole course. You know, hopefully next year we'll be able to offer something more, you know, either going back into college or something more mixed mode, combination of online and in-person teaching. But yeah, it's been challenging.
Cool, thank you for that. And let's end this section with a question for Judith. So Judith, my question for you is, you know, how do you feel about education, the continuation of education throughout someone's career? Do you think it should be at the beginning? Is it something that needs to be revisited throughout one's career, or how would you suggest it to one of your mentees?
Sure. I think education is something that you don't just finish when you're sort of in your 20s. I think it is important to think about, you know, the skills that you are going to require and that the industry itself requires over a much longer period. And, you know, what we can see at the moment, particularly, and Kat highlighted it, is, you know, there's an energy transition that we're going through, what role and a key role that the mining industry plays in that. And I think, you know, when I'm sitting at board level, it's interesting to see the sort of the change that is needed at board level in terms of the skill base that board members might have. So historically, we'd had lots of engineers and, you know, people with geology degrees, very technical people at board level. You still need that, but you also need a broader range of skills now than perhaps we might have, you know, needed historically. So, you know, for me, I think it's important to ensure that you are tapping into educational possibilities, formal and informal, throughout your career. And, you know, there are obviously Women in Mining provide a lot of educational support, young mine professionals that Kat's involved with, you know, lots of informal ways to develop understanding of different areas. of course, in addition to courses and things like that that you can actually pay for. But I think it's something that you do need to think about throughout your career, tapping it. And quite frankly, it sort of keeps life interesting. And, you know, if you can adapt yourself through your career by that additional learning, I think it just keeps options open for you as well, which can only be good for your career.
Totally. Thanks for that, Judith. So it's 5:45. We would like to start our Q&A session now. Right now, we've got one question from the audience. So I think I'm going to ask one more of my questions to the group. In the meantime, if you have any questions, please send them through. So my question is for everyone, and it is, what's your best advice for someone starting their career in mining? And why don't we start, we'll do it in alphabetical order again, starting with Carol.
Right, best advice. Gosh,
best advice.
You know what? I think Judith sort of covered it. You know, it's about keeping the options open, keeping an open mind to what's out there, taking the opportunities. I think there are a lot of opportunities now. So also, I guess another thing that I've been reflecting on recently, you know, I think there's a lot of opportunities out there with mining companies. You know, they're really looking at diversity, particularly in their graduate intake, if you like. You know, there's nothing better for a mining company for its promo videos than to have, you know, a young, diverse, technical group of people out in the field. I mean, that's great. I think the issue comes, and I think the mining companies have got something here that they also could look at. It's the career development, it's the retention, it's the support through mid-career. And so I think for people starting out, just keep an eye on that, yeah? Keep open to opportunities. Don't sit in the same role waiting for something to happen, yeah? Because I'm still not sure that all the companies are there thinking about you and your career. Only you can manage your career. So stay open to opportunities. Have a mind of where you want to be. You know, it's the classic interview question, but, you know, where do you want to be in 5 years, in 10 years? You know, is what you're doing today helping you reach that goal? So I think that's a key one as well. Kat?
Yeah, thanks. Key bit of advice, I guess I'll give you 3. First one is just have confidence. I think that was what I'd probably tell my younger self, because you're smart and you're wanted, and that's basically one of the keys to success. So if you're enthusiastic on top of that, then you can go far, but you've got to kind of back yourself, especially as a new entrant into the sector. Number 2 would be to identify those people you come into contact with that you think could become mentors. I mean, it's very hard just to write to someone and say, please be my mentor. I mean, I think it's something that a relationship that you have to develop. But if you find those people, those sponsors, those mentors, just keep them alive. Certainly throughout my career, I've had some fantastic mentors that have just really helped. And every sort of decision point I've had to make, just tapping them for their experience and guidance has really helped me. And thirdly would be develop a network. So mining is global, but it's also highly, you know, actually quite small in terms of the amount of connectivity between people is just astounding. But it can be quite daunting to try and get into that kind of network. So, you know, Judith kindly mentioned YMP, which I started, but it was sort of started because I was intimidated by a lot of networking opportunities. And I thought, well, a network with my peers doesn't sound so bad. So if you are generally intimidated by walking into a room and kind of hoping that you're going to find someone that's going to, you know, be interesting to talk to, I recommend using YMP as a kind of easy route into that, and it's focused for the younger people in the industry. So and look, for me, I think network has been super important for identifying lots of opportunities and just learning as much as I can. So yeah, that's my 3.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I think the network is something you must give yourself time to devote to network. And I know early in my career, I just thought, this is a waste of time. I'm going to do my job really well. I don't have time to do this networky thing. And certainly when I started my career, it was very much about loads of guys going out and having beers, which wasn't my scene at all. And I think things have changed, thankfully. But do carve some time out for yourself to look after your career, because as Carol says, no one cares as much about your career as you do, okay? So think about that. Carve yourself some time out. Give yourself some time to think about your career as well. Definitely think out a mentor if you can. I mean, look, it takes time to develop. It's not something that happens overnight, but I mean, you know, the opportunities that have come my way later in my career have been almost entirely due to conversations I've had with people that I trusted and that I've got to know over time. So just, it doesn't have to be really kind of planned or anything like that. Just develop relationships, listen to people, listen to their advice. Even if you don't like it, just take it on board, listen to what people have got to say. The other thing I think is it's really important, just keep on top of, you know, macro and micro issues. So, you know, the macro, really think about, you know, where the economy is going, look at what that means to mining and metals. Obviously, we've got big issues around climate change. That gives huge opportunities to the industry. Keep on top of all of that. There's a huge amount of free information out there, you know, whether it's in the press or it's in briefings, it's all out there. So just give yourself some time to focus on that. We all do our day jobs and everybody's going to be doing that. But if you're going to invest in your career, you need to find some time every day to focus on some of these other things, because that's what's ultimately going to get you where you want to go. But, you know, be patient with yourself. You don't have to achieve it all overnight. You know, you've got a long term ahead of you to develop a career. So, you know, don't try and do everything at once. That's my advice.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is don't panic. You know, things will sort of work out, and don't put too much pressure on yourself. So give yourself some time, and, you know, don't think today, what am I going to do? You know, I definitely will end up in 5 years there. Just be flexible, keep an open mind. Network is certainly a very, very important one. And it's not about just going to these events, it's building relationships. So, you know, you don't need to network with 100 people, but know 3 people. That's more the kind of important relationships that you need to maintain. And those 3 people will eventually, over the years, grow and grow and grow to, you know, you actually having a proper network that you can use in your career, not just to get a job, but, you know, within your job. You know, people that I kind of came across, you know, across my paths through various things that are now sitting as investors on the other side of the table, or are leading mining companies now. And yeah, so you never know where people end up. And so just make sure that you build relationships, because that's something that is your IP and no one can take that away from you. Another thing I would say is, personally for me, being a woman, I kind of felt for a very long time it was a disadvantage, especially, you know, not just in mining, just in general. I was in finance, it was just as male dominated. And so I think one thing I now know, and I would like to kind of pass down as advice, is use it to your advantage. Use it to your advantage that you are different, and, you know, you will have a totally different perspective when you see the same thing, and that's a good thing. So, you know, when I was talking about that example, driving down that one road in I think it was Burkina Faso, wherever it was in Africa, and I saw these differing, you know, situations of the communities just very close by. And I called the mining company out on it. I said, why is that? Why am I seeing that? I should not be seeing this. There's a gold mine underneath these people, and why is this happening? And so I made sure that that's communicated when I then spoke to investors about it. And so, you know, don't be afraid to, you know, be different. And, you know, and I remember sitting in that car, and none of the men said anything. And so sometimes it's good to be a woman and have that different perspective. So, you know, I would certainly say, you know, there are a lot of advantages being a woman in it, in the sector. And, you know, I got to fly a plane in Guyana and, you know, over kind of the rainforests, probably because I was a girl and they hadn't seen a girl in 3 months, right? So, I mean, just there's also good things that come out of it, and you can use to your advantage and utilize and help shape that industry.
Well, thanks everyone. And I agree 100%, Sanam. Social capital is very important. So thanks to the audience for the questions. Petrula, you had the first question. You had 2 questions. The first one's kind of been answered. Your second question, though, I'd like to ask our panel, and Judith kind of spoke about it a bit. Petrula is asking, which skills, because of the constant changes, which skills should we invest and keep up to date with following the transitions in the mining industry? Whoever would like to answer that, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm happy to give that one a, you know, just talk to that a little bit. I mean, I think that, I mean, currently for me, I think the, you know, and you look at any report that mining companies putting out, ESG, I would say, is top of the absolute top of the agenda, and that is of course a huge number of different areas and subjects, and it's quite amorphous. So I mean, from my perspective, you know, coming from banking, it had always been an area that banks look at quite carefully, looking at things like IFC performance standards, etc., etc. But joining a board, you have to look at things much more holistically, and I do think, as you're developing your career in mining, even if you're coming from a purely technical perspective, you have to look at ESG. I mean, if you look at things like tailings, for example, it straddles, and as many of these key areas do, both technical and environmental. And, you know, so I think, you know, my advice is, and I probably would say this without my kind of chair of sustainability on the 2 companies that I'm sitting on, but I do think that's an area where, you know, specifically, if you want to invest some time in kind of up-to-date skills, there are huge opportunities for the mining industry. You're looking at, you know, battery technology, renewable energy, et cetera, et cetera. You know, I think, you know, mining, basic industry, will always have mining. Responsible mining is absolutely critical. So get on top of ESG if it's not been part of your education so far. To me, that is an area of key focus for anybody coming up in the industry.
Yeah, I entirely concur with that. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So the next question is from Chloe. So Chloe asks, Carol mentioned that women occasionally were dismissed early on, I guess in the 80s and the 90s. Is this something you still find, or is this a lot less frequent of an occurrence now? She said that personally, she's had a lot of people questioning her choice for wanting to work in mining as a woman. So can we give her some confidence?
Can I go, San? Go first.
Yeah, well, I think you have to have a bit of a thick skin, right? So, I mean, you will have those odd comments always. I mean, I remember being on one of the site visits, sitting next to the general manager of that particular project. And it was kind of a presentation, kind of teach-in moment where they were running through the geology and the mining engineering. And so, you know, I was presenting my company as an analyst there. So, I mean, I don't know why he did this, but he kind of turned to me in the presentation and kind of drew how an open pit looks and, you know, kind of explained what the presenter was talking about. And I...
Mansplained, you mean?
Yeah, I just kind of felt like, do you actually know why we're all here? And, you know, our backgrounds? Obviously not. And so he didn't mean it in a bad way. He just felt like, oh, maybe I need to teach her. But it's that bias that a lot of, you know, especially the older generation men will have. And so rather than kind of it putting you off, you just kind of is something that is changing, but you will certainly be faced with these kind of derogatory viewpoints at certain stages in your, you know, encounters for sure. But I think as a whole, the male community is quite supportive, and it's becoming more and more supportive, you know, as we speak, because, you know, I think the importance and the role of a woman in the industry, there's a lot more focus on it now, and people are much more aware how we need to kind of nourish the younger generations and the women to come into the industry from kind of school really onwards, and how we need female representation there. And, you know, it's even part of the G in ESG, right? So I think even if there are reluctant people, now policies and everything around it are ensuring that there are women there. So I think the awareness is it's certainly there. And so you will have, and I certainly have had in my career, a lot of men pushing me up. And so, you know, but you will always get those kind of looks or kind of, oh, the pretty little thing obviously doesn't know anything. Let me, you know, give her some geology lesson. I mean, you're just going to have that. Just grow a bit of a thick skin and it'll be fine.
I'm gonna close it here, sorry, because it's already 6 o'clock. Before I hand it back to, and apologies to everyone whose questions we didn't get to, before I pass it back to Eamon, just a reminder to everyone that Women in Mining UK is working together with Imperial College. We have a scholarship to this program. I believe, Carol, when is the deadline to apply? Is it August?
I'm not sure. Let's
go to our website and you'll find all the right information. But it is available for an exceptional woman who wants to study this. It's for this year. So with that, thank you, everyone. I'll pass it on to Eamon and sorry, Nicola, for closing remarks.
Yes, so thank you very much, everyone, for joining, to all of our speakers and all of our participants. If this is your first time joining a Women in Mining event, we are a volunteer-led non-profit organisation that promotes the employment, retention and progress of women in the mining industry. If you are a student, please go to our website to learn about our scholarships. We have one with Imperial College and one with Camborne School of Mines. We will also shortly be announcing on our website this year's internships opportunities. So as always, WIM UK is open to everyone to join, regardless of gender or where you are located in the world. So if you are not already signed up, please do go to our website and join. And in addition to this, as Kat already mentioned, she also founded Young Mining Professionals London, which is also free to join. YMP aims to provide a platform for mining to thrive sustainably in the next generation through learning, connecting and advocating. So our next WIM UK event is co-hosted with Min South and is on the 13th of May at 6 p.m. BST, and that is on blockchain in mining. So if you would like to join that, please do go to our website. So that's it from me. Thank you once again to everyone for joining. We will sign off there and I hope you will have a lovely evening.